Welcome, all of you anti-core moms and dads. This is PJNET Live. Keep your promise night here at PJNET. We have already seen and heard a lot. And before, I'm going to say it again later, but I want you to know right now what you all are doing is absolutely amazing. And it has never been done before, okay? We'll go into that a little bit later. Right now, we're very privileged. The video that you just saw, we have standing by in our studio, Dr. Sandra Stotsky. Now in the video, she probably mentioned she was the Deputy Commissioner of Education, the Department of Education in the great state, or Commonwealth, I think, maybe. I hope I didn't offend any of you Massachusetts people, from 1999 to 2003. Now, what that means is she was in charge of the Common Core development and revising the standards thereunto for all grades K through 12. And she also was a part of the Common Core Validation Committee. So without further ado, Dr. Stotsky, welcome to PJNet Live. Come on in the studio here. Have a seat right over here to my right. And it is so glad, I am so glad that we were able to put this together. And folks, for those of you who don't know behind the scenes, just bringing this to you live right now on Skype has been a daunting task. Dr. Stotsky, thank you for your patience and your forbearance. We're all against Common Core. We now have a new set of downs, you might say. Obama is not there. Arnie Duncan, not there. John King, not there. Instead, we have President Trump at the helm, and we now have Secretary of Education, DeVos. What's your thoughts?
I think that what we are now doing is fantastic because we are using this new social media that President Trump has been very successfully using, so we are told, and we're doing it because we also have a political goal and an educational goal of our own.
Well, and I think I like the idea we have a new set of downs. We've got a game to play. We've got a game to win. Before, we were kind of dead in the water. Common Core was sealed in place by the Senate and signed by the President. But what's the hope now? What can change now? What's different today? Why should we continue fighting?
Because we have some hopes that things are going to work out a little bit differently once Betsy DeVos starts to understand what she actually has under her control. And even though ESSA, E-S-S-A, Every Student Shall Succeed Act, seems to think that it's going to be able to seal Common Core or freeze it into place in most states, there are some games that we can play to our advantage with the accountability provisions in ESSA that are going to make a huge difference. And that is what we have to be working on.
Okay, I don't want to get it in the weeds, Dr. Stotsky, but can, for those of us that don't know, you made a vague reference to the accountability provisions. How accountable are there? What can we do?
This is still to be negotiated. It's not clear yet what that is going to amount to in each state, but there is expected to be a redefinition of accountability by each state to the federal government for the pittance, basically, that it provides for education. About 10% of the costs of education in general across the country come from the federal level. Most of you know, or you should know, that about 45% or 40% comes from state government on average, and the other 45% comes from local taxpayers. Mm-hmm. And so, rightfully, state accountability has to figure out how to be accountable to the federal government for Title I money, for whatever it is giving in the form of grants or other funds for low-income kids. We have to figure out new ways to be accountable at the state and local level for that money. And that's where parent pressure is going to make a difference. How do we restructure accountability so that it's not just a state test?
Okay.
And certainly not the ones that
that's where I was going. Let me
for.
guess that accountability will be the means of measurement will be a test. Let me guess. And that will be given at a certain time during the year. So basically, one route of resistance that shows some hope is you could literally contact, I would assume, your state legislatures. I would assume.
Yes.
Because most states have a Department of Education secretary or head person. And
they have a Department of Education that's
right.
at the state level.
And in Florida, that commissioner is appointed by the governor, but in other states it could vary. But in other words, I would assume that the legislative body then has some control over that. So we could put pressure on our legislatures to say the test alone is not a good or sufficient. You could argue both, but you only need to argue one or the other, but you could argue both. It is
right.
not a sufficient means of measurement to provide accountability. Is that a fair strategy?
That is a very fair statement. Remember, the power of the purse is still in the hands of state legislators, just as it is the federal level in the hands of Congress. That was the way the system was designed, so that we have state legislators who appropriate the money for the executive branch, which usually includes the State Department of Education, the commissioner or superintendent of education, who may or may not be elected or may in some cases be chosen as a professional position by your Board of Education. But that usually is under the executive branch. And the money has to come from the state legislature. And they look down this long line item budget of what kinds of items they want to give money to, one of which will involve testing. Not too much of it is going to probably come from the state level, because the idea behind Common Core-based tests, as we all know, is to have local units tax themselves through bonds, through property tax increases, or other means, to have local taxpayers foot the bill.
Okay.
But
well, the bottom line
done,
is, strategically, this is not a social media battle that we wage on Twitter. You've got to zoom in and get to know, make a phone call, walk into the office of, if necessary, your state representative and say, I am a parent or I am a concerned citizen, that testing, high-stakes testing is a bad measurement and should not by itself be used as the means of accountability for our federal funds via Common Core. So that's
your
one
teacher
strategy.
unions have actually done a pretty good job on that, and parents can reinforce the message. Teacher unions inadvertently, several years ago, when they came out in favor of Common Core, basically threw their own members under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have pretty effectively gotten their members out from under the bus, because they have been getting ways or bills passed that no longer hold teachers fully accountable, even 50% accountable, which was a lot in some states at first. So they've been getting their own members out from under the bus. But parents can do an awful lot by simply complaining and keeping on complaining about that curriculum that has been established based on Common Core's standards. Because if there's anything an administrator doesn't want to hear parents complaining. And
you're in a position, that's not an opinion. You were there. You experienced it. That's not just okay. Now that's at the state level. Now there's another game changer. Quite frankly, this could be a Hail Mary. But for those of you who aren't aware, and for those of you who are now going to be aware, Congressman Massey of Kentucky, United States Congressman Massey of Kentucky, has introduced H.R. 899, which calls for the abolition of the U.S. Department of Education. Now, is that a publicity stunt? Well, I hope not. Is it going to be taken seriously? I hope so.
It will be taken more seriously than it's ever been taken if enough citizens or parents or both keep saying that this was one of President Trump's campaign promises. And this is the time to start thinking about how do you shrink down an agency that one very high-placed lawyer, who was once an attorney general for the United States, told me, as far as he's concerned, that Department of Education was unconstitutional from the beginning.
He is correct. It is a criminal enterprise. I've read the 10th Amendment. In fact, the word education does not occur in the Constitution.
That's right.
Okay, now, folks, I want to tell you something. If you want to go all in to get behind this bill, I am so ready. Now, I can't say at this point how seriously this bill will be taken. Now, we do have word, by the way, we have contacted Terry G. Wright, one of our sponsors and your video host for tonight, has contacted Jody Hice's office, Congressman Jody Hice of Georgia, U.S. Congressman. He was unable to appear tonight. However, he did send us a word just for us, and we will be sharing that a little bit later. Folks, if you're all in, PJNET is with you. If you want to do this, if you want to push this to a level that probably even Congressman Massey himself never dreamed possible, we're ready. We're ready to throw in behind you. Dr. Stotsky, there is a lot we could talk about, but many of the people here were already against Common Core and the specifics, but we have a strategy for the states. Folks, it's not fun. It's not sexy. It's grassroots activism. You've got to pick the phone up. From us. Yeah, you have to pick up the phone and call.
The squeaky wheel gets oil. We know that. And Karens have to just keep on raising their voices, or other citizens, their relatives, their families, their communities. After all, this is supposedly about kids in the schools, and it's the people who take care of those kids most of the week when they're not in school who are not happy with what's happening. And that's what Betsy DeVos needs to keep hearing from a group of people she has probably not met many of in her life.
Well, Dr. Stotsky, thank you so much for the service that you have already served in education. Your credentials are longer than, we can't do a resume with you. It would be a dossier. And it's great to have you championing that cause when you were in that seat. And it's even more of an honor to have you appear here, because the torch has been passed. It is now up to us to take advantage of the window of opportunity that's open right now. Dr. Stotsky, thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
Thank you for having me share some of this time with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Have a good evening. Thank you so much. Folks, there you have it. What a privilege. What an honor. Wow, how good can it get? Folks, it will actually, as good as that is, it's going to get better and better and better. I want to take a moment, and we won't protract this, because we will be coming in with another live update probably around the bottom of the hour. But I want to say thank you to those of you who are sacrificing, all of you sacrificing, one, your time. Number two, you are sacrificing your Twitter account. You are using your Twitter account, practically falling on your sword. Right now, folks, believe it or not, let me tell you something. 3 days ago, well, here's the history. And on the 7th, there were 118 tweets. Keep your promise. The next day, the 8th, there were 74. The next day, there were 168. You get the idea here? Today, thus far, and it is only coming up on 10 o'clock Eastern, we have 10,600 keep your promise tweets. And the only reason that happened is you and your followers. You're putting it out there. So you are the hero of what has already happened and will continue to resonate. Furthermore, there are some special people. The sponsorship for this event was basically a group of concerned activists and moms and citizens who ponied up. This was not sponsored by some big corporation. This is a grassroots movement, ordinary people like you and me and you and others. So thank you. Thank you so much, those of you who have sacrificed financially to make this possible. And we just want to assure you here at PJNET that we stand with you and we want to work with you in every possible way. Special thanks for the head organizer. If there's one person, it would be Terry G. Wright. It was her inspiration, her idea. She has gotten others to come alongside her and come to get this is happening. So folks, what I'm going to do now is we're going to turn control back over to Terry G. Wright. Hope you'll stay around for the duration of the evening. We will have a live update at the bottom of the hour, and I'll turn control back over to Terry G. Wright.